So, I have a personal story for you today about shadow entanglement. So, a little while ago, I went home to visit my parents and was triggered by my mom. Now, parents and children, they naturally trigger each other. So, if you ever think that you're done your shadow work, just go home to visit your family and you're going to find something that you need to work on. So basically what happened is that, I told my mom something that I was going to be doing that I was really nervous about, but also really excited about. And then she got upset and then I shut down. And then when I finally was able to get home back to my place, I pulled out my trusty journal and then I started teasing apart this big, messy trigger, which I'll get back to in a sec. But, so in a situation like this, where one person is triggered by another person being triggered, this is what we call shadow entanglement. So if you ever do or say something that gets a huge emotional reaction out of someone, and then you feel yourself sort of freeze or go into fight or flight or fawn mode, that's just you being triggered by them being triggered. And this can be a very confusing situation because you may not really know what's going on, and it's really easy to misidentify the trigger or to take on their shadow projections. And for example, if you ask your boss a question and then they freak out because they're projecting, say, incompetence onto you, you might take on that projection of incompetence and then shrink away instead of seeing the reality of the situation. Their fear of incompetence really has nothing to do with you. You're just the mirror to their shadow, but it's really easy to absorb that when you're in that situation. So back to my story. When I started working with my situation, I felt that the trigger was due to my mom not supporting me. She got really scared. She made a comment about, like, are you sure that's the right decision? I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of fear that came up. So I started writing all the list of ways that she could show her support. But, it still felt off. It just didn't feel like I maybe got to the core. And so I started asking myself more questions, activating the awareness mind, staying curious, asking more questions. So some of the questions I asked myself were, why is it so bad not to have her support? Is it true that she really doesn't support me? I'm an adult, so why do I need her full support to go ahead with my life the way I think I should go? And then I asked myself the question, is she upset because she loves me deeply and is just really concerned and wants me to be safe? And while this felt a little closer to the mark, it just still felt off. And I do think that last sort of piece is maybe her trigger. You know, she has this big fear that, I might be, in quote unquote danger. Um, and because this is, a pretty big trigger for a lot of parents protecting their kids, especially when your kids are now adults, how do you protect them from their life choices? So, but that's her trigger. That's not my trigger. And while these are all really great questions and gave me a lot of other shadow pieces to look at as well, the root of the trigger of my trigger still felt buried. And this is a really great space to be aware of. Sometimes you just can't get to the root of the trigger in one sitting. So you may need to come back to it in a few hours or a few days later just to excavate some more, to tease around with what really was going on and your judgments about what was happening, which is why you should always be journaling or somehow recording your process so that you can remember what you already untangled about the situation, and what's still perplexing you or what still needs more work. Now, you're really going to have to listen to your gut to know if you are at the root or if your ego is still holding something back. So you really need to be patient with yourself when you're dealing with shadow entanglements, and take as much time as you need to process them, but always push yourself forward. Don't just say, oh, I can't figure it out, and walk away forever. You deserve better. But it'll always be there until you learn the lesson. So stick with it, or it'll find you. And after, I took a deeper look into my situation, I asked the very important question, what else is there? Is there something that I am missing? And it turns out I was not triggered by her not supporting me, because she does support me. I was being triggered by her being upset. My action caused my mom some emotional discomfort. And no one really likes causing someone else to be upset. But for me, this was a shadow piece because I had taken on the emotional protector role in my family. This is the role I thought I needed to play in order to survive. So when other people are upset and around me, I just get uncomfortable and feel that I have to make things better, or at least make things lighter, sort of lift the mood a little bit. And I had really started to tie my self-worth into making others feel better, being able to sort of release some of the pressure of the discomfort. Now you can see that this is a very subtle distinction about what was triggering me. It was my mom's reaction, but not what my first judgment was about the situation. The first judgment was, her not supporting me versus me being uncomfortable with her discomfort. And this is why shadow entanglement can just be so tricky, is that you really need to separate what is your shadow and what is their projection. And so if we go back to the boss example that I brought up earlier, if being incompetent is in your shadow, then you're going to be really triggered by someone thinking that you're not smart enough. And then, you might not be able to see that maybe you were never given enough information in the first place to complete the project. So you're just going to end up blaming yourself and feeling really bad about the whole situation. And while the boss in this example is partly to blame, you also have all the power to do your own shadow work. And this is your responsibility to go inwards and sort out your own shadow so that you can start to pull back your own projections. And then when you do this, situations like this, where say your boss is yelling at you, you can see their projection for what it is. And then hopefully be able to point out to them, that you didn't have all the information in the first place and that you're not incompetent. You just need more tools or resources to do the job that they asked you to do in the first place. And, maybe they apologize, or maybe they're still grumpy, but at least you walk away not feeling hurt. Now, in my situation, I can use this awareness about myself wanting to emotionally protect others and start to look at other times in my life when this emotional protector role has come up. And I can start to see how I shut down in favor of protecting others' emotions. And then I disregard my own needs. And this is a really good skill to have, to be able to hold space and to listen to others and protect other people's emotions. So yes, that's a great skill, but it needs to be balanced. And so knowing how to put your feelings aside, that makes you a great helper, like a nurse or a coach, but always shutting down and always prioritizing protecting others can lead to a lot of people to be in very toxic relationships, either romantic relationships or friend relationships or work relationships. It can be a really stressful and lead to burnout, really, in the end. So now I'm on my journey to finding a balance between helping others, but also taking care of myself and my own emotional needs. Now, I just wanted to bring up another example of shadow entanglement that I see a lot on social media with our kind of divided society and just how easy it is to make comments on social media. So I think you've probably witnessed a comment section on the internet just getting way out of control with people taking something out of context and then lashing out. So, maybe the original author might then backtrack or get really nasty in return. And this is going to be your flight or fight mode trigger response that's coming up. And it is really hard to do much on social media because people are these dehumanized little icons. And so you can kind of say whatever you want. And there's little to no repercussions, or you don't feel like you're actually saying it to another human. So there's a lot of other interesting stuff goes on, but this is just something for you to look out for and be aware of. When you see stuff like this happening, was the post or the picture inappropriate, or was someone else just being triggered? And to make this situation more confusing, both can be true. Someone can post maybe a joke that isn't actually funny and is maybe a little insensitive. But someone else can also get really, really triggered by it. And then maybe they lash out, and maybe they're making comments about how the original poster is a horrible human. And then they compare them to Hitler or someone who's committed all sorts of atrocities. And they're really not on the same level. So you can see that that is quite a trigger piece. And maybe the joke wasn't okay. They're not the same. And so only you can do your own shadow work. And I know it's really hard pulling yours apart from someone else's, especially when their shadow is kind of in your way, or if their projections onto you kind of align with your own shadow. So you're really just going to need to start to tease the situation apart to make sure that you have, or you're working on the right shadow piece. And so some really great questions to ask, and I will put these in the comments for you, is, what exactly is triggering me? You need to get really clear on that. And then, why is the situation so bad? Is there something else that's deeper than the surface trigger? What are my needs in this situation? Do I need to respond? Or will it just add more fuel to the fire? What is so horrible about this other person thinking that I am stupid, mean, bad, whatever their shadow projection might be? And lastly, do I really care what they think? Sometimes that can be hard when it's, your boss who's in control of your wages, or you getting fired, or a parent or loved one. But sometimes you get involved with shadow entanglement with a person on the internet that you don't know and probably never will know, or a stranger on the street. Do you really care what they think? So let me know in the comments if you found this helpful. Like, subscribe for more content like this. And if shadow work is new to you, head on over to my website and download a free intro to shadow work workshop so you can learn more about the whole process.